management is a cornerstone of every business's ability to survive and thrive in a world filled with uncertainties. From financial downtowns and cybersecurity breaches to operational disruptions, risks can arise from numerous sources. In 2023 alone, cybersecurity threats cost businesses over $6 trillion globally, while operational disruptions accounted for an average loss of $260,000 per hour for enterprises. Now, while traditional methods have played a crucial role, the advent of AI has transformed how businesses approach risk management. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Analytics Insight podcast, where we talk about the cutting edge of technology and how it is changing how we live, work, and connect. And I'm your host, Priya Dialani. Now, generative AI in finance has caused a technological revolution throughout the entire financial sector. It changes how fraud detection operates while adhering to risk management and compliance processes. According to certain projections, the generative AI market will reach $62.72 billion by 2025, maintaining a CAGR growth of 42% till 2030. Now, these AI solutions use modern analytics to examine big data and recognize irregularities while automating risk evaluation. So then how can businesses keep up? The answer lies in data, and more specifically in how we leverage AI and machine learning to transform that data into actionable intelligence. Let's welcome Vincent Walden, CEO of konaAI, a company under Covasant Technologies. Hi Vincent, how are you doing?
Hello Priya, thank you for having me on the show.
Great. It's a pleasure to have you with us on a podcast today, Vincent. And of course, we are going to talk about a very crucial and critical topic that is kind of impacting the entire financial landscape. And I think somehow it is also overlooked by certain enterprises. But before we dive deeper into our conversation, let's understand more about, Covasant and konaAI. So if you could help us understand more about the company and its specialization, it would be great.
Sure. Well, yeah. My parent company, Covasant, is an AI-first technology company that is building leading agentic AI and other technologies. They have a section with risk insights and enterprise risk that my company falls into. We recently announced our acquisition about a month ago, and I'm super excited to be part of the Covasant family. So my company is konaAI, and we are focused specifically on fraud, waste, and abuse and related compliance issues around anything financial that involves customers, employees, or vendors. So when you think about third-party risks, money going out the door, my passion is finding hidden money and demonstrating ROI for our software customers.
Great. Thank you for that overview, Vincent. And of course, when we're talking about fraud and compliance, I think there's a lot that goes into the picture. And I'm really happy to understand about konaAI and, of course, how it is driving innovation at the forefront of these specific challenges, and how we can probably, ensure the intersection of emerging technologies in solving certain challenges. We would also like to know more about you, Vincent. You have over 25 years of experience in forensic technology and data analytics. And of course, you're also recognized expert in continuous control monitoring, information governance, and legal discovery services. So we want to know more about you. How has the journey been till date? And, what exactly is your role at konaAI, and of course now, which is now undertaken by Covasant?
Thanks, Priya. I'll tell you just the brief story of how we got here. I was a consultant pretty much all my life in the Big Four, starting with Arthur Andersen, for those that might remember that, 25 years ago, I think, who rode the Enron ship down. But we were doing data analytics and e-discovery, going through emails and doing white-collar crime and investigations. But throughout my career, I was with EY for 16 plus years and a partner at EY and Ernst & Young for about 9 years. In fact, one of my mentors is still a partner and leads the India practice at EY. So great firm. But what happened was I was doing financial crime, white collar crime, and investigations as a consultant. And the problem was, and we were using a lot of the technologies where we would pull data from a company's financial accounting system or their ERP system, and we built libraries of tests. around, what is a high risk payment, what's a bribe, what's a kickback, fake vendor schemes, ghost employees, abusive rebates or discounts or returns, you name it. We did all those types of work, but we did it manually. We would rip data out of an ERP system, put it into a SQL database, and then push it out to, back then, a Power BI or Tableau dashboard. And people were coming to me and saying, great. In fact, I made a living at that as a partner for 10 years, and it was great. And the clients would love the analytics, but they would say, great, can you refresh the data? And I would say, well, yeah, that's going to require my consultants to come back out, and that's going to be another $100,000 or $50,000. And that model just didn't work in perpetuity because fraud risk management is not a project. There's no start and stop date with fraud risk management. It's a business process, and a business process needs to be embedded in the organization. So that's not something that you have consultants do. That is something that you have as a business process where you use software and technology. So I went to my co-founder, my dear friend Anil Kona, who was also a partner at EY in their India office, as a matter of fact, and I said, can you build me my dream platform? Everything that we couldn't do as a consultant that could just sit at the client's IT environment in the cloud and just run. And lo and behold, thank goodness, over COVID and over 2020 and 2021, we built this dream platform. And lo and behold, I'm proud to say now, gosh, we have processed over $1.4 trillion through our algorithms. And we found, we're coming up to almost 500 million in identified high-risk transactions and stuff that our customers flag as potentially improper payments. So that's a little bit of the story. It's a lot of fun, and you could tell, hopefully in my voice, that I love what I do. I'm very passionate about helping companies find hidden money and fight fraud.
Oh, definitely. We can definitely make out from your voice that how passionate you are and into what you are doing. And I mean, it's always fascinating to hear how individuals like you are shaping an organization's journey, especially in an environment that is changing and so rapidly. And I of course agree with your point that fraud risk and management is an entire process and not just a mere task. And I think it's really important that each enterprise around the globe is having that perspective. And I'm sure our listeners, after listening to this, would definitely take that into consideration. So thank you for sharing with us that.
Thank you. And Priya, can I add one more thing too,
Sure.
just in how it evolved? So we had built this product up to a point where now here we are in 2025. We were doing machine learning, which again, AI and machine learning has been around for 20 plus years, right? Where the Covasant play comes in, we merged with Covasant given their Agentic AI and actually just their general AI capabilities. They're basically taking us to that next level. We're actually calling it konaAI 2.0, where we are now, instead of pushing bots, and I'll get into this in a little bit later, but instead of clicking dashboards with your mouse, the agents are now driving the dashboards and hunting for the fraud prevention and tests. So we're really excited with our new relationship with Covasant because these guys, they've got a great methodology and a great platform for building agentic AI models.
Yeah, definitely. Of course, we are also, hoping that we would be able to witness new innovations and breakthroughs coming with Covasant Technologies with your integration with that company. Moving ahead, I think financial services businesses face the constant challenge of profitably reconciling compliance and business performance in a very highly scrutinized and frequently changing regulatory environment. Now, I suspect some see it as a pointless and unwinnable challenge. But what if the data collected from compliance reviews could minimize their regulatory risk and unlock new opportunities for growth and efficiency? And what if that same data could also reduce the compliance costs? Now, I think it can, and I think I would like to hear more on it from you. So, what role do you think data plays in driving proactive and intelligent compliance strategies?
And I think nowadays data is, well, it's obvious it plays a significant role. Interestingly, the compliance programs and the teams a decade ago were made up of all attorneys. And rightfully so. That was good, and where they were developing the policies, doing the investigations, and making sure that the legal compliance was in place. Nowadays, that doesn't that's not applicable. I mean, you're going to have one or two or three attorneys, but you're also going to have data scientists on your team. We call it data-driven compliance. If you look at the last 10 years, since the 2009, 2010 financial crisis, if you look at the last decade, in 2010 to 2020 period, that was kind of a golden age. And I would even say up until even last 1 or 2 years, it's been a golden age of compliance officers where they've had almost unlimited budgets in the U.S. Because of enforcement from the U.S. Department of Justice or FINRA, even global companies. I mean, even in India has their own anti-corruption laws that are actually currently being strengthened, and every country has it. But they all require, to be effective, not just a paper policy that sits on the shelf. To be effective and measurable, you need data. And that's specifically why we built konaAI. And that's why we're using machine learning to demonstrate the power of data-driven compliance to show and help the business make informed decisions, not just to say no. And oftentimes, compliance gets a bad reputation of the office of no, which means all they do is say no. They don't ask compliance because all they do is say no. That is the wrong mindset, and we're changing that with data analytics. We can say, look, we see risks here, make sure you put extra controls here, but we don't see risk in this other market or what have you, and you can go faster here and make strategic investments there. So having that insight helps you make strong business decisions, just like every other department in the organization. You think marketing doesn't use data analytics? Of course they do. You think engineering doesn't use data analytics? Of course they do. What makes compliance different? They don't get a hall pass. Everybody in the organization needs to be using AI and data insights to have a seat at the table when it comes to corporations and actually driving business value.
That's such a powerful insight, Vincent, and it really underlines how data isn't just a passive record anymore. It's more like a strategic asset that organizations can use to anticipate compliance challenges before they even arise. And I also, loved how you highlighted that using data to drive intelligent compliance is also really about connecting the dots across different departments and addressing those signals in real time as well. Now, I think that's a big shift from how things were done even a few years before, I would say. Of course, I think when we are talking about fraud or risk management, I think traditional risk management relied heavily on manual assessments, human judgment, and historical data. Now, while these methods have been effective for decades, they struggle to keep pace with the increasing complexity of modern risks. And risk assessment may be influenced by subjective judgments or oversight, and this can lead to inaccurate outcomes. Now, with these limitations, I think organizations are now turning to advanced technologies, of course, like AI, to enhance their entire risk management framework. So I think traditionally, when we used traditional models, I think fraud risk and compliance have been pretty much reactive. With AI coming into picture, I think it is kind of helping them to get into a more predictive and preventive mode. So how do you think that AI is helping them adopt a more preventive risk management strategy?
Yeah, Priya, gone, and I'll say this, I'll make a huge point here. Gone are the days when you need, 15, 20, 30 people in a room doing due diligence checks or doing repetitive tasks. It's almost transformative of how AI and a lot of the automation work has enabled fewer people to do more with analytics. So that's one impact. There's a people aspect, which is fewer people doing more high value work. And I will tell you for your listening audience, if you have any business process out there now where you have more than 10 or 15, or I'll just say 10 or 15 people doing a repetitive task, that is a ripe opportunity. And I don't care if it's compliance or what, that is a ripe opportunity for AI to improve the business processes and save money and have those people doing more value added tasks than a repetitive due diligence check or a repetitive invoice payment or analysis. So that's one piece. The other piece where we're seeing AI really transform compliance is in the information that can help drive prescriptive insights. Gartner talks about, historically, most data analytics has been descriptive, which is, hey, what has happened in the past? And then, again, like I said, a decade ago, we were all excited. We were using machine learning, which would get us to predictive. Hey, this is likely going to happen based on a statistical confidence level. And that's great too. What's happening now is what Gartner described as prescriptive. And this has been around for a while, but we haven't really been able to get to prescriptive, like what should we do, insight, until recently, and really until generative AI really hit the market, post 2022. And so now it's not only when we can look at what contracts are out of policy. Okay, that's fine. You can do that with an LLM just by loading up your contracts, a large language model. But then being able to say how much is at exposure. Well, that's not an LLM question. That's a SQL or a data question with structured data. That's hard. But with the technologies that we're combining with Covasant, we're now able to not only ask, what are the contracts or what are the invoices or what have you that are out of policy, but being able to say how much. That requires numbers and data and structured data, and that to me is what matters. And that's what's really exciting with some of the agentic AI models that we're pulling together, or we're pulling together vast amounts of historical investigative data, company policies, procedures, documentation on certain items. That's all the unstructured stuff that goes in the LLM. But when you can combine that with, and again, no one's coined this term yet, but large transaction models, instead of LTM perhaps, and I don't know, someone's going to come up with a name for it. But when we can combine both LLMs and LTMs for transaction models, that's where we get to prescriptive insights to say, hey, look, these risky transactions look a lot like a previous investigation that we did or that has been prosecuted. You might want to take these 5 steps. That's the stuff that really excites me. And that's the stuff that we're building now and deploying and testing with our customers at Covasant.
Thank you for that insight, Vincent. And you've wonderfully broken down those concepts and addressing the challenges. I think it's really fascinating to hear how AI is not just helping businesses respond faster to threats, but it's actually staying a step ahead of them. And of course, moving from a reactive to a very proactive stance has massive implications. I mean, organizations are not just minimizing the losses, but it's also strengthening trust, ensuring business continuity, and enhancing the regulatory alignment. So I think we are currently in an era, thanks to technological development, that fraud management is not just about ticking boxes. It's becoming more
Right.
like a strategic function, which is powered by data and contextual intelligence. And I, of course, very much you spoke about structured data and how it can probably help us devise our strategies. So my next question is somehow related to that. I mean, when we're talking about data, companies have an overwhelming volume of unstructured data that doesn't fit neatly into their databases or spreadsheets. Now, this is
Sure.
everything, your emails, your documents, customer reviews, social media posts, images, video. I think the list is never ending. And according to one research, unstructured data is growing at an annual rate of 23%, with 80% of data being unstructured. Now, despite this sheer abundance of data, unstructured data is often left untouched because it's but obvious it's difficult to manage, interpret, and of course extract values, specifically for organizations that are still using traditional tools. And I think that's where AI comes into picture. And when we're talking about fraud and compliance, I think the amount of unstructured data is again huge, because you have contracts, you have voice logs, and I think it's huge. So how do you think that we can use AI to mine insights from such unstructured data?
Well, from unstructured, and again, I believe in both structured and unstructured, and maybe that's just the old CPA in me. I was an old Arthur Andersen auditor way back when, but when with unstructured data and being able to leverage it, it's funny. I just took just an example of how powerful some of these generative AI models are, and tools like Llama and others that we're seeing. When you could just load even my software company, konaAI's user manual, just one document into an LLM, and then being able to ask in a chatbot, how do I set up a new user, and it to automatically understand just with that one document, to get an answer in the bot that says, here are the 5 steps to set up a new user, and for it to understand that just kind of blew me away. And then being able to then do that with hundreds, if not thousands, of documents unique to a domain. That's what really got me excited. I mean, interesting when you think about, the larger LLMs that, the OpenAI, ChatGPT type models, or the Google Bard, and those. That's just, indexing well, I don't want to use the word indexing. That's just collecting the internet, which is huge. It takes a lot of power. That is, the general LLMs are great. No doubt. But I think the real value is when companies can build their own domain specific LLMs with unstructured data and perhaps even structured data, right, Priya? But when they build their own domain specific ones, that's where the business value is really going to come into play. So if I'm building an airplane, for example, give me all the documents around airplane building. Now, if I ask that LLM a question on how to build a car, it's not going to know the answer because its domain is only on how to build an airplane. So, I mean, that's that domain specific insight that I think is going to make a difference for me and for what we're building at konaAI. I'm currently taking all regulatory information, so all of the US DOJ investigations findings and penalties, the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, a whole bunch of compliance insight and guidance and modules. I'm taking industry courses and training manuals, etc. And I'm building, to me, I think, the kind of the world's best domain knowledge around fraud, risk, and compliance. And then when I can mix that with my clients' data, their policies, procedures, and their transactions, those two domains working together can really drive some very intelligent agentic AI bots. That gets me pretty excited.
Definitely, and I think what you shared is incredibly relevant to today's, data landscape. I think it's very easy to underestimate just how much critical intelligence is buried in unstructured formats. But as you
Yeah,
rightly pointed
yeah.
out, unstructured data isn't just a noise. It's often where most valuable and context-rich signals live. And with AI coming into the picture, and which where AI is no longer limited to rule-based extractions, I think it opens a new world for fraud prevention and compliance. And it's just not limited to detecting breaches, but proactively identifying risk as it's developed. And of course, in the years to come, we are definitely going to see a real edge and redefining what risk management looks like in an AI driven era. Moving ahead, in earlier of your responses, you mentioned about agentic AI, and I think when you talk about AI agents or co-pilots, I think they're not only boosting the efficiency of operational processes, but they also greatly enhance the quality of fraud detection and strategic decision making. Now, when we integrate these advanced AI solutions into existing infrastructure, enterprises can gain a significant competitive edge, and they can effectively navigate the complexities of fraud prevention and make everything more reliable, I think. And when we are integrating AI or ML into fraud management, I think it definitely has a potential to redefine how organizations can combat fraudulent activities. So what kind of tech stack or data infrastructure is needed to enable AI in compliance or fraud detection at scale specifically?
Yeah, this is where, again, when we combined with Covasant, because they have a platform or an ecosystem for agentic AI development that I think was key. Companies, when I think about most companies are doing business in the cloud now, and there's a tremendous amount of resources in the cloud, whether that's AWS or Azure or you name it. That is There's a lot of tools available to developers or to IT to help build out some of these stacks. And that's where Covasant is helping advise those customers or those companies on how to best align the resources. Again, whether it's not just compliance risk, but any business challenge is what they are doing. From an enterprise risk perspective, the stack that you need, to me, it always starts with, and again, I focus more on fraud risks as it relates to vendors, who you're paying, your customers, how they paying you, and are you giving away too much of discounts or what have you, and employees, are they ripping you off, are they stealing money from you? Other tools and technologies, we have my sister company DCube focuses on cyber risks and related transactions around cyber. But for me, everything in my world starts with a transaction, a payment, or an invoice, or some system of record, and it rolls up. So the data sources that you need to think about your accounting system, your enterprise resource planning system, the SAPs, the Oracles of the world. And to me, if you think about it, if it starts with a risky transaction, well, that transaction rolls up to a vendor. That's the entity. And that vendor belongs to a business unit, which then that business unit belongs to a geography. And so the idea is, and we've taken, for some of the world's largest companies, and again, these are big Fortune 500 companies. One of my largest companies is the largest online retailer in the world, as well as some of the largest mineral and mining company in the world. If you start with the lowest common denominator, a transaction, you can do these massive roll-ups and provide risk insights at the transaction level globally. So here is, $20 billion of disbursements for this period. And here is a map where we see more high-risk transactions in this country or this business unit relative to other business units. And so that's where our clients are able to focus their insight and review. It really makes a difference. So starting with the ERP system and then enriching that data. So starting with the transaction, but then, hey, what was the due diligence done on that vendor? Are they hitting on some watch list or sanctions list? Were they previously investigated? Is there a conflict of interest between that vendor's address or phone number and the employee's address or phone number or even bank account, right? All these things can be put together when you break down data silos and put them into a unified data model. And I think that's the key. Unified data model. We call it a UDM. And that unlocks hundreds of different tests and business questions that you can ask of the data. You're not going to find fraud by looking at one data source at a time in a silo. Fraud is complex and always dynamic and changing. You need to be looking at multiple data sources, bringing it all together, and that's where you're able to have better insight. And that's when I asked my co-founder, Anil Kona, way back when, if he could build me that dream platform, that's exactly what I had in mind when we built konaAI. It's designed to bring in multiple data sources, both structured and unstructured, to give us that risk insight. So apologies for that long answer, Priya, but that was an important one.
No, that's really insightful, Vincent, and thank you for sharing that. And of course, when you're talking about fraud risk and management, we would definitely need, the right tech stack isn't just about having necessary AI tools, but it's about creating a robust data foundation, and that is very much needed in today's world where we need to support real-time decision making, have more precision, and of course, remain compliant under pressure. So I think when we're talking about these emerging technologies, I think it's very much strategic. It's a strategic need. It's not like a that nice to have strategy or a tool in place. I think it is now shifting to a must have, specifically to combat fraud, risk, and management. That brings to our last question. So if you could quickly wrap up and help us understand, what does the road ahead look like, or what are certain trends you think will shape the future of fraud, risk, and management?
Well, like I said, bringing together multiple data sources into large language models, or even or into those domain specific clouds, that I think is the future. One thing I can guarantee you, though, is that we won't be saying agentic AI and AI generally in the next 2 or 3 years. We'll be saying something else. Hopefully, it's not general AI, because that's where we start getting into human stuff. But one thing's for sure, and I ask the audience to keep in mind, 10 years ago, everybody was talking about big data. And then it was blockchains, and which to me is just really good security, which enables bitcoins and all the other stuff. And then it was agentic, or then it was generative AI in 2022, 2023, and 2024. Now it's agentic AI. It will continue to change. It will continue to, and like I said, guarantee you in 4 or 5 years from now, we won't be saying agentic AI. We may not even be saying AI. We'll be saying something else. And Priya, if you know what that is, let me know, because I want to invest in it and we'll make millions. No one knows, but I guarantee you it's going to change. It always does. And that's what makes fraud risk exciting. Technology is always advancing, and the insights that we get from our data is continuously improving. And so for the audience, and I think for those especially in risk and compliance, keep apprised, and don't be afraid to experiment. Don't be afraid to pilot. Sticking with the status quo is the danger. And the last thing that I'll say on that is that, people always say, is AI going to take my job away? And I hear this answer, this answer gets asked a lot. Is my job at risk for AI? No, your job is not going to be replaced with AI, but your job will be replaced by the person who keeps up and understands AI. So if you're not learning or keeping up with it, yeah, you might be replaced pretty soon by another person who does understand and can utilize AI to be more efficient in the business. So I encourage the audience to just stay apprised and keep training on it and be aware. And don't be afraid to pilot and experiment with it.
Definitely, I agree with you, Vincent. And like I mentioned, AI and fraud risk is no longer a luxury, but a necessity for businesses to navigate today's complex risk landscapes. And by offering unparalleled data analysis,
Yep, no
predictive
doubt.
capabilities, and AI is empowering organizations to stay ahead of potential threats. And despite the challenges of high data privacy and implementation costs, I think the benefits of adopting AI far outweighs the drawbacks. So thank you so much, Vincent, for your time and effort to be on a podcast today and helping us understand that AI is not just transforming how we manage fraud and compliance, it's redefining what's possible. And in a world where risks are dynamics and regulations are constantly evolving, having an intelligent, adaptive system is a much of a necessity. So thank you so much for your time and effort. And it was lovely talking to you.
My pleasure, Priya. Thank you for the time.
Great. This is for our listeners. Thank you for tuning in. If you found this discussion helpful, don't forget to subscribe, share it with your network, and stay connected for more episodes on how technology is shaping the future of business. Until next time, I'm your host, Priya Dayalani, and you can view all our previous podcasts on Spotify and other leading platforms. Thank you so much.